San Francisco Ethics Commission, the meeting is called to order. We'll start by taking the roll. Commissioner Studley.
Here.
Commissioner Hayon.
Here.
Commissioner Rennie.
Here.
Commissioner Liu is excused today. The first item on the agenda is public comment on matters appearing and not appearing on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of the Ethics Commission.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. And of course, stop the corporate rape at the public library. Don't give money to the Friends of the Library. Don't accept money from the Friends of the Library. It has been since March 26th that this Ethics Commission has had a regular meeting, nearly 4 months, virtually a third of a year. This is like leaving the city unguarded. This is a disgrace, especially in view of the grand jury report. I distributed to you through your staff a flyer reminding you that July 18 was the one-year anniversary of your letter to Mayor Edwin Lee regarding your finding that Jewel Gomez was guilty of official misconduct. She has been retained as president of the Library Commission, presumably to prove that ethics is meaningless for the public-private partnership. Mr. Ray Hart appeared before you attempting to play Ms. Gomez's statements that were posted on the Library Commission website. Let me give it a try. If you're watching at home, you may want to hit the mute button.
People who were fucking buried what's happening today. Shit, I'm walking the ghetto, and I used to carry a straight face.
What you have to understand is that this was before Ms. Gomez swore out a fraudulent police complaint against Mr. Hartz that was full of lies as retaliation for statements he made in public comment that were unquestionably within the scope of protected free speech. The context is that the public-private partnership rakes in over $5 million per year without any fiscal or ethical accountability. The sunshine violations are legendary. The attacks on citizens to protect their graft against democracy are ferocious. These grifters will break every rule, tell every lie, tell citizens they are nonsense, that they need to get a life, and all kinds of vile stuff I hope you can barely imagine. Since your last meeting, Mr. St. Croix was quoted in the San Francisco Chronicle as saying, quote, "The Ethics Commission's biggest critics are believers in gotcha government." This is the criminal's mantra. Do you have any idea of the social damage that is caused when people are faced with the abuse and corruption that exists in our society, and the director of the Ethics Commission states that he's against accountability? In fact, the effect is devastating. Mr. St. Croix treats ethics, apparently, as just another opportunity to network with the criminals. Well, the reason why we have an ethics commission is because the supervisors and other public officials just treat it as a chance to network with the criminals, and we needed an outside independent group. In fact, why should they fire Ms. Gomez if you can't fire Mr. St. Croix? Thank you.
Members of the Ethics Commission, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. Know Your Rights Under Sunshine Ordinance is printed on every agenda for city board meetings and commissions. One of those rights is to submit a 150-word summary, which is supposed to be included in the minutes. I have 4 orders of determination in cases number 10054. Get the overhead? Against the Library Commission. A referral for enforcement, a denial by the Ethics Commission without hearing, and a letter to the city attorney telling him to quit advising people contrary to what the Sunshine Task Force said. Case number 11054 against the city librarian, where he was found in violation, a referral to the district attorney on the matter, a referral to the city attorney on the matter, and a referral to the Ethics Committee on the matter. Case number 11088, finding this commission in violation of the same ordinance, and a memo from the task force telling all city departments that the law clearly says in the minutes, and they interpret that to mean in the minutes. And then finally, 11071, finding the city attorney's office in violation, because basically what City Attorney Herrera has done is said, you can keep people's protected political free speech out of the official record and make an attachment and put it where somebody can't see it. And the only reason we're going to say that is because although the law says in the minutes, and the task force at least 4 times has said in the minutes means in the minutes, the city attorney says, oh, outside the minutes is just the same thing. If it was the same thing, he wouldn't be fighting that hard to keep it. So with all of these cases, with all of these referrals, with all of the time passed, what do I have? The Ethics Commission continues in its almost uninterrupted failure to enforce in any way findings of official misconduct. This commission heard one case against Jewel Gomez, which was referenced by a prior speaker, and sent a recommendation to Mayor Ed Lee that she be removed. The mayor has taken no action on this referral. I guess the mayor will only follow whatever your recommendation is in the case against Sheriff Marakarimi if it suits his political purpose. I don't think he puts you in a very good position, because bottom line, if you come out to remove the sheriff, everybody's going to say it's because you're political appointees, that's what you were told to do. Very frankly, that's what it looks like to me. You've got all these people that have found an official misconduct referred to the district attorney, the city attorney, nothing happens. You find him in violation, nothing happens. What do you bet that if you find Sheriff Marakarimi in violation, something will happen for the first time in more than a decade?
I'm Alan Grossman. I've appeared before you before, most recently in April at the joint meeting with the task force members regarding the proposed regulations. I do want to point out something to you that you're probably not aware of. During the period of about August 2011 until I think just before your meeting in April, 5 or 6 referrals from the task force were dismissed allegedly by the commission because the respondents were neither an elected official nor a department head, and the dismissal letters from Mr. St. Croix said you only handled those cases. The whole purpose of that April meeting was to straighten out what had been originally decided in June 2010, which was you did have jurisdiction over the task force referrals under 6730C. So now we're back to where we were, except that there are 6 cases that were dismissed improperly and should be reviewed on the basis that you did have jurisdiction to hear them, whether the respondent was an elected official or a department head. I think it's only fair to the complainants, and I think it's in keeping with your responsibilities to make sure that everything is done according to the book. Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Larry Bush. I was at the Rules Committee hearing in June, where there was discussion about some proposals from the Ethics Commission put forward by Supervisor Wiener. Before that meeting took place, Supervisor Campos had asked Harvey Rose to do an analysis of how San Francisco and Los Angeles compared on policies dealing with ethics and transparency, and how they did on enforcement. I didn't see anything in the minutes or in the notes from the executive director telling you all about that Harvey Rose report, but it's an important one, and I brought copies for all the commissioners. It does a very good job of outlining places where San Francisco is somewhat better than Los Angeles, and places where San Francisco might want to consider adopting policies that are in Los Angeles. Some of those policies are directly related to issues that you'll be dealing with later on 1.126. The other point that they made was that they'd like to see the Commission take a stronger outreach to the interested persons meetings so that more people have an opportunity to participate in the discussions. And the chair of the committee, Jane Kim, specifically said that she would like to see the commission not wait any longer on providing information to the public in languages other than English. And there is examples of that from the Los Angeles Commission about how they do that. Thank you very much.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Michael Petrellis, and I'm a person with AIDS. And a little bit of history. I am alive in part because of Freedom of Information Act requests filed in the 1980s before we even had the drug AZT. FOIAs were filed to find out about clinical trials on experimental drugs at the National Institutes of Health. And once we had the information, we were then able to look for the similar drugs for sale either in Europe or down in Mexico. I mention this because for me, sunshine, open government, access to public records, and enforcement of the laws for those public for FOIAs is a life and death matter in some situations. Having said that, I would like to address the terrible undermining of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force by Supervisor Scott Wiener in the past couple of months. He has removed extremely qualified people from the task force, and unfortunately, he's replaced them with certain members who admit in public that they are unqualified to be sitting on that panel. After Supervisor Wiener installed Todd David, the first task force meeting happened, and I was at that meeting and asked Todd David, and it was captured on camera and it's on YouTube, what are your qualifications? And he said over and over again, Michael, I'm not qualified. That horrifies me. That we have a member on the task force right now who said in front of witnesses at the task force and on camera, I am not qualified. That appointment is really dangerous to Sunshine and good government here in San Francisco. I really believe that we need this commission, the Ethics Commission, serving as a watchdog. And right now, I don't think that's the case. To be blunt, I look at the Ethics Commission as a lapdog commission, and that is not healthy for San Francisco's democracy. Please, my take-home message for you today is develop strong watchdog principles. Carry them out. Start enforcing the power and the decisions that are coming here from the task force when we're not getting documents or city agencies are not adhering to the law. Finally, I have statements for the record and one copy for the chair. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Oliver Luby here. Regarding a package of campaign finance reform amendments proposed by your staff and passed by the Ethics Commission in November, the Executive Director's report does not fully describe the rejection that the amendment package effectively received at the June 7th meeting of the Board of Supervisors Rules Committee. The ED report summarizes the outcome at Rules by saying you were asked to engage in another public process regarding the amendments and that the frequency of disclosure should not be reduced. Not mentioned was the strong public outcry about the amendments. Not only did the amendments decrease both finance disclosure and campaign communication disclaimers, but they also created a loophole for the return of the notorious electioneering issue ad communications, eliminated the overall contribution limit, and also had drafting errors. The ED report for today further claims that your amendments would have made various requirements parallel to state law. In fact, the proposed amendment for general purpose committee pre-election filing actually conflicted with the minimum requirements of state law. It would have exempted contributions between general purpose committees from triggering pre-election disclosure, contrary to state law. This is the second time that the supervisors have rejected a proposal by your staff to roll back a 2006 reform, which provides a simple, broad pre-election reporting threshold for general purpose committees. I refer to CFRO section 1.135. Moreover, the ED report fails to note the legislative and budget analyst report referenced earlier today, which provided a detailed report to the supervisors contrasting San Francisco and Los Angeles campaign finance and ethics laws, including identifying certain reforms that exist in LA but are absent here. For example, on your agenda for today are regulations for the contractor contribution ban, which prohibits contractors from donating to office holders approving contracts, as you know, including 6 months after contracts are approved. In LA, the prohibition is 12 months after contract approval, and fundraising by contractors on behalf of the office holder is also prohibited, as noted in the report by the budget analysts. Furthermore, I'd like to point out that LA law prohibits officials from receiving contributions from persons who have had a legislative or administrative matter before the official during the preceding 12 months. San Francisco's contractor contribution ban should be expanded in San Francisco to include recipients of development permits and other major economic benefits approved by elected officials. So I would encourage you, each of you, to watch the video of the Rule 7 of the June 7 Rules Committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Charles Marsteller for the record. I did want to tell you I did also attend that hearing at the Rules Committee, and I found it to be very thorough, so I would recommend you look at the tape. There is a need, I think, to get a city attorney opinion on what the CFRO clearly requires you to do when amending voter pass initiatives, and that is that you not only need the supermajority, as you well know, everyone knows that, but you also need to know that the bill or the amendment before you furthers the purposes of the act. That's explicitly stated in the law, and it was our intention when we drafted it, that's Mr. Stern and myself, when we came up with that language, to require those two thresholds. So I wanted to say that's something we haven't really gone into in any great detail, and I'd be happy to discuss it further, but it's not possible for the Commission or the Board to adopt several of the amendments before you, in my view, as they are in violation of these requirements and therefore would be illegal. That came up at the hearing before Rules, and Rules did in fact discuss that at length. So I think the Rules Committee would like to have a city attorney's opinion, and if you don't ask for it, they will at some point. In fact, I would imagine that they will amend the law, the CFRO of the next pass-through, to require this. And that is the simple remedy. The simple remedy is to basically say that there should be the issuance of findings concurrent with the adoption of any amendment. And I think that the city attorney would concur in that opinion. So you would probably be well advised to set up a mechanism or a provision in the code or in your regs to require promulgation of regs concurrent with the amendments that come forward to make sure that you're in conformance with this law. This is a very special law because it's one of two occasions you have the right to amend a voter pass initiative, and I doubt if you're going to have that opportunity to do that further. So I did want to say that I hope that you'll take consideration of this recommendation on findings, and that in fact you may want to calendar it or put it on your agenda for discussion. And I'll be happy to come back at that time, and I hope everybody's well, and I welcome the new commissioners since I've been here to the commission.
The next item on the agenda is consideration of amendments to CFRO. Mr. St. Croix, would you like to introduce this matter? Ms. Singh.
This is CFRO. Okay.
These are amendments to section 1.112. There's a staff memo, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, can you introduce yourself for the record, and can you introduce the issue, summarize it?
This is Stephen Massey. I'm the Information Technology Officer. Under state law, local committees are required to file campaign finance statements with the Ethics Commission, and they're required to use state FPPC paper forms. Committees are required to file 2 paper copies of every statement, and then state law requires state committees that file with the Secretary of State to file electronic copies of statements in addition to paper forms, but state law does not require electronic copies of statements for local committees. CFRO section 1.112 requires local committees to file copies of statements with the Ethics Commission in electronic format. The result of this is that there are 3 copies of every statement that are filed with the Commission. There are 2 paper copies and 1 electronic copy. So staff has been working for a couple of years to consolidate these requirements, and the result of this was legislation at the state level that was carried by Tom Amiano, AB 2452, and that bill passed, and it allows local agencies to eliminate the paper filing requirement and require electronic filing as the official document of record.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Massey.
I thought we were on the other memo. This is something we've been working on for a very long time, and I think it's going to save a lot of resources and make life easier for the regulated community, and it reduces a lot of paperwork for the staff, and I think the public users of the information will still have quick access to all the information they need and deserve. I just wanted to thank Stephen. Did just a really lot of work. We spent several days in Sacramento working on this, and so I just wanted to point out that he did a great work. He deserves the thanks of the Commission and Assemblymember Amiano as well.
Well, on behalf of the Commission, thank you, Mr. Massey, for your efforts. Any comments, questions from the Commissioners? Commissioner Studley?
I know that we have been working for quite a while on this, and I begin with, I focus on the advantages for the public. What I found most compelling in the Executive Director's report were the ways in which it allows public users of the system to get integrated information and not chopped up information if, for example, a committee goes from a small filer to one that is required to file electronically, that they now would end up with all of the materials together, and a variety of other ways in which it seemed like it would be positive for the public. And that, to me, relates to the requirement that the amendment further the purposes of CFRO, which, as we have just been reminded, and I do mean reminded, not instructed for the first time, that is the principal question that we have to ask. And that leaves me in support of all the pieces. There is one thing that I think that my question was, I asked a question, had a question as I was reading, and then I believe it was answered, but I would just like to make sure that I understood it correctly. I was wondering, as I got to Section 2B, my question was, can we give filers who are not required to provide the information, under $1,000 filers, the option to file just electronically? Did I understand the last point to be saying that they do have that option, or did I not connect?
Yeah, we've added
properly?
a section. Section 1.112C to allow for voluntary electronic filing, and if they comply with that, then they would not need to file paper copies.
As I was reading along, I was hoping that we did that, and I was pleased to see it. So thank you for confirming that. Thank you. That's all.
I too appreciate the efforts that the staff has made to get this in place. I think it is going to be a huge benefit to the public. I have one question about decision point 1. So are these proposed findings in section 1 all new from line 10 through page 2, line 19?
Yes, they've all been added.
Okay, so I'm looking at, I just want to make sure we're looking at the same document, because it looked like additions were supposed to be in underlined italics.
Maybe I could answer.
Sorry.
This one, when we draft ordinances with findings that are not intended to be codified, under the board's formatting rules, those findings are in the Arial, not underlined, not italicized font.
I see. Okay.
And so that section 1 won't be codified. It's just it'll just be in the ordinance, and it won't ever appear in CFRO.
I see. The one problem I had with the findings was number 5. It seemed odd for us to approve that statement. I don't know if that's just a function of how things happen, or whether we can delete that. I mean, it just felt odd for us to approve what the board thinks.
So actually, that statement is the most important statement, because under the state legislation, the local agency would be required to pass an ordinance with that statement.
But I thought you just said it's not codified.
Right. The board, the city has to make that particular finding in order to adopt this ordinance. That finding doesn't have to be in the code. It just the city has to make the finding in order to go to this electronic filing system. And I wonder if one suggestion would be just changing that finding number 5 to read the Board of Supervisors and the Ethics Commission finds that, et cetera. And then the second sentence would also read the Board of Supervisors and the Ethics Commission, because the board will also have to consider and adopt this ordinance.
I think that would be preferable, in my estimation. Any viewpoints from the commissioners to the contrary? Commissioner Studley?
No, I have a slightly different point, as long as we're looking at the findings. So it's if you want to conclude your point, and then I'll...
That was the conclusion of my point.
Okay. What I'm looking at is, going back to what I said a moment ago, this focuses on the staff burden of the current system, and in both number 2 and number 4. And for me, the starting point is that the information is available more quickly and in a more usable format. It's there, it's in number 4. But consistent with the comment I made a moment ago about the requirement that the amendment be advancing the purposes of CFRO, my suggestion may be as simple as changing number 4 to flip the 2 substantive elements of that sentence, to make the information publicly available in a shorter time frame and more usable format, and to conserve staff resources. I think that puts the priority where it belongs. I see Commissioner Hayon is...
Commissioner Hayon?
I agree with that. Is there any reason that would be
I don't think there's a
concern?
problem with that.
Mr. Massey or Mr. Givner, any problem with that? I think that's an excellent suggestion. Any other comments from the commissioners with respect to this item? Let's open it up for public comment.
I had a comment or a question about the paper filings as opposed to the e-filing. I'm the treasurer of a small club, and we put out a slate card every year, $5,000 or $6,000 it costs us. And the e-file program is written in such a way. I used to be a computer program, and it's just, there's so many bugs in it. And when they put that program together, I don't think they contemplated that there would be, that to put out a slate card, you would have, not only have multiple issues, but multiple checks, so that you end up with an Excel file, a matrix of numbers. This last election was a small election. It ended up to be 16 candidates and issues, and we wrote 5 checks. So that's how many entries I have on Schedule D, except you don't have to, you can consolidate items under $100, supposedly, which I did. Okay, so filed my report. But then when it came to the second filing, the totals were more than $100, so I have to go back and correct my original $460. Okay, so that's 64 entries for Schedule D, 16 pages of entries, which are nonsense, total nonsense. No one would ever go to look at them, because what Schedule D is supposed to provide is how much did your slate card contribute to each candidate? And there's so many entries of little bitty numbers, it doesn't give that information. But when you go to ethics and say this is nonsense, the answer is a bureaucratic reply, well, but that's the correct way to do it. Either they need to fix the program, or I've asked that, well, why can't I do Schedule D, paper, just on paper, and provide it that way. And then finally I came up with a matrix that has the sums in the vertical sums and the horizontal sums the same as my matrix, but with only 22 numbers. And I did it that way. So instead of 16 pages, it's like 6 pages of Schedule D. This is all nonsense, because no one's ever going to look at this. And they need to correct the program, or else give us some relief. I don't think there are many clubs who are putting out this kind of a slate card. It's just a $5,000 slate card.
Thank you, ma'am.
Excuse me, Oliver Luby here. The prior speaker's concerns regarding Schedule D are very well founded. The system wasn't originally designed with Schedule D in mind. Actually, that was bootstrapped onto the system, and it's not user-friendly. There could be some improvements there. Works great for candidates, but it's hard for the small PACs. But as far as the legislation is concerned, the proposed CFRO amendments are very good. However, the rationale offered in the staff memo for ending paper filing, that it is more costly and inconvenient for the Commission and local committees to continue to process and submit paper filings, stands in stark contrast to your executive staff's decision to retain paper-only filing with one campaign form, the 126 contract disclosure reports. Incidentally, these reports are triggered by the same law that's at issue with item 4 on your agenda. When I was on staff, I alerted ethics management that a campaign firm was regularly copying the contract disclosures for the purpose of creating a private database of prohibited campaign donors, which puts regulators and grassroots campaigns without such a database at a disadvantage. I informed the ethics directors that there was a budget-free way to implement e-filing of this form, which is to switch from paper to an Excel-based form submitted by email, as is already done by certain public financing forms from your agency. Your managers retain the environmentally unfriendly paper format. This results in staff hours spent on scanning the forms before they can be posted online. Switching to an Excel-based form would not only save you resources, but facilitate the construction of prohibited donor databases and aid in compliance efforts for all San Francisco candidates. Your director has had the authority to implement this form change on his own, and since he has deliberately chosen not to adopt this simple and tech-smart mechanism for facilitating enforcement and compliance, while publicly bemoaning the administrative difficulties that the paper contract forms present, I recommend that you add a provision to Regulation 1.126-4 mandating that the contract disclosure be in an Excel or other electronic format. In addition, the state law change that facilitates today's switch to e-filing only for campaigns, which is Tom Amiano's AB 2452, equally applies to government officials filing Form 700 conflict of interest forms. In 2007, Ethics Management, to their great credit, made a long overdue proposal, which was mandating e-filing for the 700s. The commissioners at that time made the decision to reject that reasonable staff proposal and stick with paper. As characterized by the SF Weekly, the rationale was because, like, computers are hard stuff. I suggest that you revisit that proposal and instead of having staff manually scan and post the 700s, automate those tasks and provide a real database. Thank you.
Commissioners, Ray Hart, Inspector San Francisco Open Government. The real question I have for the Ethics Commission members on this agenda item is, if these documents are submitted electronically, when and where will the public have access to these public records? Changing the requirement without showing any benefit to the public for complete and timely access is self-serving. The memorandum mentions timely access, but places no requirement in the actual law on the EC staff to post these received documents immediately. It mentions in there, oh, well, these can be filed immediately, but there's nothing in the law that says they have to be. And I think if you're going to put a requirement on people submitting these applications and then present the idea that they'll be available to the public, there should be something in the ordinance that specifically says that they should be available within a certain time frame after submission. With these proposed amendments to the Campaign Finance Reform Ordinance, Section 1.112, at each point where a requirement is placed for filing electronically, there should also be placed a requirement for all such documents to be made available to the public immediately upon receipt. One of the most frequent complaints I hear from the Ethics Commission staff is how overworked they are. And the Ethics Commission staff is always complaining about their workload. Having these documents immediately available online to the public would ensure that nothing is missed by the staff hard-pressed to carry out its duties and responsibilities. Very frankly, if they are available immediately online, political opponents would be able to review them, and that's typically who is going to look at these things very carefully and at first to see if their opponents are doing something that they are, getting outclassed by. If the public looks, it is much better to have many, many members of the public looking at these than to say, oh, well, we're going to limit all of these thousands in some cases of pages of documents, and we're going to rely on the staff to be able to effectively and thoroughly review these. None of us is as smart as all of us. And if the public has access to these records immediately, they are able then to go look at the records, and because each individual typically has certain things they are more concerned about when it comes to the political process, they will be focused on different aspects of these forms. And as a result, you will get many, many, many people who will review these forms and be able to point out any problems that might exist. I think open government, and especially with this election coming up, we need to avoid what I saw at the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force at the last election, was people coming in saying, we're trying to get hold of records relating to political contributions. They won't give it to us. And the task force actually said, well, we can give you an order of determination, but ethics won't enforce it. And so all we can say to you is you better go to court or else you're out of luck. They won't give it to you until after the election.
Hello, Commissioners. Larry Bush. I just want to second the notion that there should be a timeline when these things should go up on a public access database. When I was looking at Form 700s filed by elected officials for stories that I was doing in City Report, I found that weeks would go by after the deadline and they would not be available. So I began calling some of the people who I knew were in elective office and said, why haven't you filed your form? And they said they had filed them, and they gave me the date. And then they came back and checked with ethics, and ethics says, we have a large stack. We just haven't gotten around to getting them all posted. I think as part of a performance system, there ought to be a timeline where you ought to say, I don't know if immediate really works, since so far they're still paper, but if you go to what Oliver Luby suggests and have them electronic, there's no reason why they can't be done within 10 days. This is the same kind of thing that should happen in any kind of form that you all are doing. So I urge you to adopt a standard for performance of when these things will be available publicly. Thank you.
Commissioners, Charles Marceller again for the record. I do want to say there's a lot of interesting things in the Rose report. Mr. Rose did assign 2 staff onto this project, and they took it very seriously, looking at LA and San Francisco with some degree of depth. And it occurs to me, as it may occur to you, that in time, maybe in the near term, you might be able to exchange ideas with LA. But to do that, you might want to put together a small group to go down and look at LA and look at certain processes and procedures, and you might have an eye-opening experience. You're going to have that in the report itself, but it may well be that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Either one of us, there's things that we can give them and things they can give us. For instance, they might tell us that they've already been requiring electronic filing for SEIs. I don't know. But they might tell you exactly how to do that, and they might give you the software to do it. I don't know. But that's the type of thing that might come up. So that's the only comment I had to make.
Thank you very much. I do have a couple questions that were raised by the public comment. My understanding is that once we have electronic, anything that's filed electronically is available immediately on our system. Is that right?
That's correct. It's available within a few seconds of submission, and these records are already filed in electronic format. We're just eliminating the paper aspect.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So there shouldn't be any additional delay, or there's no need to further provide for a timeline for when they're available, because they're automatically available if and when an electronic filer files the document.
Yes,
right?
And as soon as they're submitted and we receive the documents, the staff has access to the documents at the same time as the public.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, but just to be absolutely clear, the staff does not have to do anything to submit it or make it available or to screen it or to hold it. When the person hits submit, it becomes, it goes into the system and is accessible to staff and the public. Or is there some intervening step?
It's an automated process, so we don't have to intervene at all.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Han?
So in terms of the filing that we're discussing, does that address the point that was raised by Mr. Bush?
I think it does. I mean,
except that SEI, I'm sorry, except that SEIs are not all filed electronically. If they are not filed electronically,
then they need to be.
Then they have to be entered. Yeah.
Right, but what we're proposing should, anything that's filed electronically, and we're proposing that more be filed electronically, will be available faster than it could be available if we had to scan in paper copies.
So the suggestion with respect to SEI's Form 700s is would be a separate item for us to take up.
And that has not, we have not done anything. None of that has been addressed. Is that correct?
Not since. Go ahead.
The prior to now, state law required that they be paper. In the past, what we did was we made an electronic filing process available, but not mandated. So people can file them electronically, and when they do that, they're ready available. But most of the people required to file do not use the electronic version.
Thank you.
The other question I had was with respect to the electronic version of Schedule D. Is that what would be is that harder to use than the paper?
So
form?
Schedule D, the way the state constructed the electronic format for that is complicated, and as a result, the way you need to complete that section is laborious in the electronic system. We are actually working on a revision to the system that would speed up the entry of Schedule D to get around some of the state format issues, but I don't expect that to come out until early next year.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that you all are working on it. That's great. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Is there a motion to adopt decision points 1 through 5 with the 2 amendments proposed to decision point 1?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. The next item on the agenda is consideration of amendments to regulations for Section 1.126 of the CFRO. Ms. Sanger, Mr. St. Croix?
Yes, So what we have before you are amendments to the regulations that to clarify certain issues that have been raised regarding the expense of Section 1.126 of the Campaign Finance Reform Ordinance. And basically, many of the changes are technical in nature or linguistic in nature. The main thing that we wanted to do was to clarify that when we're talking about the applicability of Section 1.126, it applies to an individual who holds city elective office in any committee controlled by that city elective officer. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions or comments from the commissioners? This strikes me again as helpful amendments to clarify the purpose of 1.126 and clarify it in terms of how it is applied. I think it is consistent with the goals of CFRO and the intention of the voters. I welcome public comment on this matter.
Commissioners, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. Is there ever a meeting where you're not revising CFRO? Isn't this somewhat akin to rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic? You write a rule concerning contributions, and participants in the political process find a reading of what you wrote to get around it. You write a rule saying city employees and or officials can't award a contract and then leave city government and work for the same group who got the contract, and you give them an exemption. As certain members of the public tend to follow particular campaign issues, many of the people I know are very likely to look at your agenda and notice more the missing documents than what is supplied. At most times, it seems like the Ethics Commission staff provide you with the documents that will lead you to the determination they want, rather than all documents that cover all sides of the issue under discussion. As has been mentioned several times tonight by prior speakers, there are, in these cases, 2 requirements. One is that you make these changes, and that the Board of Supervisors do it. Well, if the Board of Supervisors at the Rules Committee is having a discussion and the staff chooses not to pass that information on to you, then how can you effectively work with the Board of Supervisors to come up with a comprehensive and complete and coordinated plan? And it really does seem, from reviewing some of the documents the public gets, that you get one side of the story and other documents are left out and therefore are not considered. Now, the other option, which I hate to think of, would be that you are being provided documents and the public is not, which obviously would be a severe violation of the Sunshine Ordinance. So if the Rules Committee is having discussions and Mr. Rose gives them a report relating to these very things you're talking about, and the staff then passes on to you a recommendation which leaves out the fact that the that the Rules Committee made several suggestions as to changes they felt were appropriate, that leaves you out of the loop. And it just sets up a dynamic where it goes back to the Rules Committee, and the Rules Committee says, well, we had a report from Mr. Rose, and we made suggestions of changes, and then it went over to the Ethics Commission, and they just sent it back to us, completely ignoring it. All I'm saying is that the picture that is presented, not only to you, but to the public, should be a complete and balanced one. And unfortunately, a lot of the things I review with the Ethics Commission, the staff seems to send you documents which support the position they're taking and then leave out other information.
Is there a motion to adopt the changes to CFRO identified in Agenda Item 4?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Ms. Ng.
I'm sorry, can we go back, and I'm sorry to do this, can we go back to item number 3?
Yes.
There was a decision point 6 that was not mentioned in the motion. I wondered if the commissioners can consider that, because it does contain at least one change that we mentioned.
I'm sorry.
That is on page 7 of the staff memo.
Yes.
And although it says 7, it really is decision point 6, I think. It says 4, excuse me.
I think you just said 1 through 5.
Yes, okay. Going back to the proposed amendments to CFRO Section 1.112, is there a motion to adopt the changes suggested in Decision Point 6, having already approved the changes proposed in Decision Points 1 through 5, subject to our 2 amendments? Is there a motion to adopt Decision Point 6?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Public comment.
Aye.
Aye.
Public comment.
We had public comment on all of them.
Okay.
The motion was made as to 1 through 5, but I think
Separate
we had.
motion.
So we need a public comment for. Is there public comment on Decision Point 6? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No opposition. The motion passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is closed session held pursuant to Charter Provision C3.699-13 to discuss anticipated litigation as a plaintiff. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No. Public comment, sorry.
Oh.
Commissioners, Ray Hart, Director, San Francisco Open Government. This closed session should be continued to a meeting where the item is properly agendized. This item is totally meaningless to any member of the public reading it. Agenda requirements say that the meaningful description of each item is to be something that anybody of average intelligence can understand. There's nothing in here. You're going in there to discuss litigation. Okay? If you're going to discuss anticipated litigation as plaintiff, how can anyone comment on whether or not it's appropriate to go into closed session when they know absolutely nothing? Litigation about what? Against whom? For what purpose? Is there not a single salient point that could give some understanding to members of the public? Public business should be conducted in full view of the public. Members of the public should have enough information in the agenda to enable them to address whether they believe that conducting this particular business beyond the view of the public is appropriate. Ethics Commission staff, and by that I mean Mr. St. Croix, will argue that you've met the letter of the law, and I would argue that you have completely missed the spirit of the law. Even the Police Commission, who happens to be, they go into a closed session every single meeting. They give us the case numbers, they give us the type of case, they give us some information to figure out what the heck they're going in the back to discuss. And with what you've got on here, there's absolutely no way that anybody would have the faintest idea. And I have a hard time believing that there is not a single thing you could tell the public about what you're going back to discuss that would inform that of that information and allow them to make meaningful public comment on whether or not a closed session is appropriate. I do believe closed sessions are used in an inappropriate way very often for things that you just don't want to deal with in front of the public. And I'm not talking about just the Ethics Commission, I'm talking about all city commissions. We'll just slap a litigation or a lawsuit or some name on it, and we can go in the back and we can discuss anything we want. And Commissioner Studley can sit there and shake her head, but as a member of the public who sits here and sees little or no information and almost never, ever sees any discussion afterwards to disclose anything that's held in closed session, it's hard to believe that any group of people, any human beings could go into a group, have a discussion for some indeterminate period of time, like the Police Commission went into closed session for 4 hours. And you're telling me that that group of people had a conversation that was so well controlled, they never talked about anything that was disclosable. It's almost impossible for me to believe that human beings can have a discussion and not occasionally go off track or occasionally get sidelined onto something which is really disclosable, and yet each and every time they come back and go, oh no, we didn't talk about anything at all in that session that we should disclose to you. Nothing, never. And everybody, when they do it, is perfect.
No, that's why we have lawyers.
My name's Richard Hansen. The only reason I'm here tonight is I don't like to see my elderly wife go out by herself at night, and I want to be sure she got home safely. But this is really the best show in town, and you know, talk about a paper tiger. I mean, I must say that I agree with the previous speaker. I mean, somebody must know why you folks are here and why City Hall is kept open and why the lights are on and what folks are talking about. Otherwise, what's the issue? Why be here? Thank you.
Go ahead if you want to. Is there a motion to, I'm sorry, we did make the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I think, did I say aye? Aye. Opposed? None. The motion passes. We'll go into closed session.
I wonder if Mr. Givner could, with your, the chair may view it as not possible for him to, not to add to this, but when litigation is proposed, I can understand why anything is that relates to that is attorney-client privileged and that there's not more that can be said here. I wonder if there's any explanation that you can give for that sort of situation. I mean, to me, it speaks for itself, but that's the burden of a lot of years of
I'm not sure that I can
not on this
offer much more
on the general subject of the level of notice when there's nothing that you can speak about.
Sure. I think what might answer some of the questions that Mr. Hartz and I'm sorry, the other gentleman raised is that the agenda references Charter Section C3.699-13, which is the provision of the Charter that requires Ethics Commission proceedings regarding potential enforcement matters to be confidential up to a certain point. And so that may provide some information that would be helpful to you.
So they're explicitly this is information that is specifically compelled to be confidential. This is not a judgment call by us. We are following the rules by not saying more than this.
That's right. The
agenda
charter
item says.
requires that these discussions remain confidential.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Givner and Commissioner Studley. We are now in closed session.
SF Gov TV. San Francisco.
Adopt a child from foster care. Just being there makes all the difference.
So welcome to the Bee Center! Hello everyone, my name is Phil Ginsberg. I'm the General Manager of your San Francisco Recreation and Park Department, and I want to thank you for joining us on this great occasion. This is such a great moment for us not only because we're opening what is arguably the best recreation center in the city and county of San Francisco, but I also get to practice my Chinese. Dai ga ho! Hello, everybody. Ah hai gum si bo. My name is Phil Ginsberg. Fu yang loi do. Dun yut mei. Hua yun. Hong lo jun sun. Welcome to the Betty Chinese Recreation Center. Rose, how did I do? Come on. A for effort. We're killing time. I could try to do it again. No! All right. 61 years ago, Mayor Elmer Robertson officially opened the doors to the original Chinese Recreation Center here at Washington and Mason Streets. And in those 61 years, there have been generations of Chinatown kids who have grown up playing here and who've considered this their second home, their backyard, their place to play. It's a safe place to meet friends, exercise, or as we like to say at the San Francisco Recreation and Park Department, it's a place to just get out and play. Chinese Rec was never the biggest and certainly not the fanciest recreation center, although I think it is now. But it definitely was the most loved. In a neighborhood like this where population density is one of the highest in the city and where parks and open space are severely limited, recreation centers like this are crucial to the health and well-being of our kids, our families, and San Francisco's residents. This new recreation center is the result of what all of us have accomplished together, including San Francisco voters who approved the 2008 Clean and Safe Neighborhood Parks Bond, our elected officials, our Chinatown community leaders, residents, city staff, and everyone who has a deep connection in history here at Chinese Rec Center. We like to say at the Recreation and Park Department that we can't do it alone, so we want to thank everyone who's had a hand in building this incredible facility. So, we've got a few acknowledgments. It's only going to take 2.5 to 3 hours to get through them, so bear with me. Obviously, I want to thank our incredible mayor, who you're going to hear from a little bit later on, Mayor Edwin Lee. I want to thank Board of Supervisors President David Chu. I also want to single out board members Eric Marr and Scott Wiener, who are behind me joining us today. But let's give a big round of applause to the entire Board of Supervisors who have proven to be incredible park champions and really understand the importance of parks and recreation to the quality of life of San Franciscans. I want to thank the incredible leadership of our Recreation and Park Commission. The president of our commission, who you're going to hear from a little bit later on, is here, Mark Buell. Also joining us today on behalf of the commission, Commissioner Tom Harrison and Commissioner Megan Levitin. So as I said, we don't do these things ourselves. We can't do it alone. We couldn't have done it without the incredible partnership of the Department of Public Works. Mohammed, I want to thank you, and I want to thank your entire team. I also want to thank Plant Construction, which built this incredible $21 million facility. And again, you're going to hear from Harry Young in just a little bit, but my heart, our hearts and our appreciation goes out to the Ong family, Harry and the Ong family, for all of your involvement. There you are, for all of your involvement in this facility and your leadership. And I can think of no better way to honor the legacy of Betty Ann Ong. These bonds happen because of park advocates and because of community and because of philanthropy. And leading the way for the San Francisco Recreation and Park Department is our incredible partner, the San Francisco Parks Alliance. Representing the Parks Alliance is its executive director, Matt O'Grady, and the president of the board, Rosemary Cameron, is here someplace. Thank you, guys. Our motto at the Recreation and Park Department is that we want to keep our parks clean, safe, and fun, and no one is more important and no entity is more important in keeping them safe than the San Francisco Police Department. Chief Sir, thank you very much. I saw Commander Beal and Captain Tom here, I think. Give them a big round of applause. This facility has got some absolutely incredible public art, and when we rebuild our recreation centers and facilities, it's really an opportunity to invest in the incredible importance of public art in this city. So I want to thank the San Francisco Arts Commission, Director Tom DeCaney, Project Manager Mary Chow, Artist Colette Crutcher, and Chan Chan Chang for just the incredible beauty that's inside the center. Thank you, Tom. I'm working on it. We have actually a special certificate. Nadia Conrad, are you here? Representing the office of Tom Amiano. Nadia wanted to make a brief presentation to the Rec Center. Nadia?
Thank you. I'm here with the office of Tom Amiano, and we just want to congratulate this special day, and we're happy to be part of the celebration, and we love the fact that they chose a brave and heroic individual to name this historic building after. So thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you, Nadia. So part of what the Recreation and Park Department has created to help us steward, again, under the motto that we can't do it alone, all of our major recreation centers have recreation councils. And the councils are composed of caring and committed community members that really will help us guide the center, help us steward the center, help us keep it clean, help us protect it, and tell us what kind of programming and special events are important to keep the center vibrant and robust. So I want to give a big shout out to the Betty Ann On Community Recreation Council. Many of the representatives are here today. Our bond dollars allow us to build new buildings, but they don't actually allow us to put anything in the buildings. So again, I'm so grateful for the philanthropy from the San Francisco Parks Alliance, and in particular, the Betty Ann Ong Foundation and the Ong family for your generosity in making sure that when the kids walk in here in a few short moments, there's all kinds of incredible fun stuff to do, and maybe even a ping pong table or two for me to duke it out with the mayor. A big round of thanks to the Chinatown Community Development Center for all of your community leadership and stewardship and guidance in making sure that this facility is exactly what it needs to be. So let's give a big round of applause to CCDC. A big thank you and to the Chinese Chamber of Commerce. Rose, a big wave. Thank you, Chinese Chamber of Commerce. A big thank you to the Community for Better Parks and Recreation in Chinatown for your help and assistance with the facility. Let's go. Keep it up. And last, but certainly not least, and I know you've saved your biggest, strongest round of applause for this special group of people, the hardest working staffers in city government, the Recreation and Park Department. I want to start with our Capital Division, our Capital and Planning Director, Don Kamalanathan, and our project manager who built this thing, Toksa GK. I want to thank Jimmy Chin, our former facility coordinator here, who's got a great jump shot. Our rec staff, Henry Chow, Serene Chu, Jennifer Han, the new facility coordinator here. Michelle Hom, Richard Hom, Terry Trejo, our Recreation Supervisor, Jerry Wong, our Park Services Manager, Mary Ann Barticelli, and our Custodian Supervisor, Cliff Shong, who are going to help us keep this place clean. A big round of applause for them. And last but not least, a really warm round of applause. You all know her, the former area supervisor here and longtime advocate of this facility, Elaine Tom. Elaine, where are you? Fantastic. All right. And this is actually going to be dramatic, because here he comes. The man I'm going to introduce is not Moses, but he's close. Is the biggest supporter of parks and recreation and open space in this city. He understands the importance to our neighborhoods and to our communities of having clean and safe places to play. He's been an advocate for parks and open space and recreation, even in his days as the director of the Department of Public Works and a city administrator. The thing I love most about him is his youthful spirit and competitive fire. This is a guy who is not just our mayor, but he's a ping pong player. He loves to shoot hoops. He loves baseball. He's a big sports fan. He loves our kids. The thing I try to model after him most is the ability to play and to bring joy to the job. Ladies and gentlemen, our mayor, Edwin Lee.
I know. First of all, thank you everybody for coming here and helping us open the Betty Ann Ong Rec Center. We're going to say that name very...
We are back in open session. Is there a...
Bless you.
Bless you. During closed session, we took no action that we need to disclose. Is there a motion to find that it is in the best interest of the public not to disclose its closed session deliberations regarding anticipated litigation?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
No.
Oh, no, public comment.
Members of the Ethics Commission, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. Let me guess, you're now going to vote that nothing you discussed is subject to disclosure. I'm prescient. I'm amazed that this Ethics Commission seems to be composed of no one but superhumans. Whatever length of time, whatever the issues, you never ever discuss anything that you should disclose. Most human beings find it difficult to stay on track that closely. Most human conversation tends to wander off track from time to time. You, however, maintain that such a close control is maintained that you never, ever move on to another topic. You never discuss anything that should be disclosed. Wow, I'm impressed. Or could it be that you discuss things and having exhausted the topic, someone says, oh, we probably shouldn't be discussing this as we would have to disclose it. So let's close the discussion. Oh, comes the response, you're right. We should return to the discussion we told the public we were going to have. What a scam. I find it incomprehensible sometimes to watch boards and commissions who will do things that just make no sense because they do it every single time. The Arts Commission has a habit of their consent agenda. Nobody ever votes no. Every single person votes yes on every single item. I find that hard to accept. Nobody disagrees with anything. And every single board and commission, it's not just you, it's every board and commission I go to, when they go into public comment, they always come back and they never disclose anything. And again, you've all been in public life, you've all been in public meetings, you know the tendency is to conversations to take sidetracks. And I find it almost incomprehensible that every single time people come back from these closed sessions, and for the good of the public, they don't disclose anything that was discussed. Not one single thing is mentioned ever or discussed ever, subject to disclosure. Now, I have to wonder about the people who wrote the Sunshine Ordinance. Why did they put the requirement in there that you disclose things that were discussed that need to be disclosed? I think they accepted that human beings, who they are going to occasionally discuss things which weren't exactly on point with what they told the public they were going to discuss, and they thought if they do that, they should disclose it. And I just don't believe, realistically, that any group can always go into closed session and never discuss anything that's disclosable.
I think we were in closed session, Mr. Hartz, for maybe 10 minutes. And I think, like we've said before, we're required by 699-13 not to disclose the contents of the particular items that we had to discuss today. All in favor of the motion to not disclose our closed session deliberations? Aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. The next item on the agenda is consideration of the minutes of the Commission's regular meetings of March 26th and special meetings of April 13th, April 23rd, May 29th, June 19th, June 28th, and June 29th. I think there are competing issues with respect to the minutes of the special meeting. One is that we have a requirement. We are required to post the minutes, the minutes that have been voted on, as soon as practicable or in a reasonable amount of time. And so we certainly want to follow that. I think our other limitation, though, is that many of these relate to meetings that are still in process. In other words, beginning with the evidentiary portion of the hearing, we essentially are continuing the meeting until its completion, which we hope will be on August 16th. So it is, at least to me, it seems a bit unusual to approve minutes for a meeting that is not yet concluded. I would ask for the staff's viewpoint and the viewpoint of my fellow commissioners as to whether we should adopt those or vote on those minutes. I understand that we will at some point have to adopt the minutes or vote on the minutes for the sessions that have occurred relating to the Mirkarimi matter and the session that will occur on the 16th. So at some point we will have to adopt the minutes on the 16th anyway. Should we wait until that point, or should we do these interim ones now and vote on the last one when we meet at our next meeting after August 16th? Commissioner Rennie?
Well, I guess my thought was that insofar as they were minutes, there are some of them are minutes of regular meetings which were not related to the special sessions that we've been holding, that I would think that we hold off approving the minutes for any of the minutes relating to the Mirkarimi matter and just approve the minutes for our regular meetings, because it may well be, as I think we've mentioned at the hearings, that the determinations that may have been made that are reflected in some of these, for example, the May 29th meetings and the June 19th meeting, may be changed before we reach a final determination. So it would seem to be premature to deal with those at this time. We should hold off until we reach a conclusion of those hearings.
Commissioner Studley?
I appreciate your raising this, and I appreciate that comment. And I agree that it's a balancing act between sharing information with the public and care about taking the matter as a whole. What's going through my mind is that the meetings that they report on were all public. Every single word is already public and can be interpreted by people who were there or who watched it or who talk about it. So it's not as though these are the only vehicle for conveying information about the meetings that already took place. I wonder if the comment that Commissioner Rennie made could be, and that balance could be struck, and this is just a possibility that I'm exploring, whether we could address what Commissioner Rennie spoke about by simply adding something to each set of the minutes that says that the evidentiary rulings can be changed or revised, that this is part of a comprehensive proceeding that is not concluded, whatever we need to say to, within the bounds of the document, explain what its limitations are, but not, which would avoid our seeming to withhold information about the steps that we have already taken. I really am, just wondering whether that would address it, because it seems I see some downsides to having them before us and not officially sharing them or giving them that next step of formality. But I also agree that we might double back to some of the things that we did. Does that help any, or does that still feel uncomfortable to the other commissioners? And I'd be interested in public comment on this as well.
One of my other concerns, and I think I'm leaning more towards Commissioner Rennie's suggestion of adopting the meetings of the minutes of our regular meetings, but not the special meeting with respect to the Mirkarimi matter, is that one thing I think we would benefit from is having the parties' lawyers review these findings and tell us if they think that there are any inaccuracies.
I would be fine with that. I think that's a reasonable suggestion.
And to do that, I think we'd have to give them an opportunity to review and do that, and then we could perhaps adopt all of these together when we adopt the minutes to the August 16th meeting. Mr. St. Clair, do you have
just so you're aware, the draft minutes are already public documents, and they're available on request to anybody who asks for them.
Right.
We don't publish minutes until they've been adopted by the commission, and then once you adopt them, we have 4 days to post them. Because if we publish the draft minutes and then post a change, you've kind of got two versions out there on the internet that are conflicting. So we wait until you finally adopt them to actually put them, but they're already available to the public. So if you wanted to go ahead and do that and get comment from the attorneys of record, that would be fine. In the meantime, what's written is available to people who want them.
Okay. And to me, just to be clear, that would be the minutes of our regular meeting on March 26th. And I also think we can adopt the minutes to the April 13th joint meeting with the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force. but the minutes regarding the official misconduct charges against Mr. McArimi, I think we should hold off on. We welcome public comment on this matter.
Commissioners, Ray Hartz, Director, San Francisco Open Government. Fortunately, I wanted to comment on the regular meeting minutes. In the minutes of the March 26, 2012 meeting, there is an example of why I feel the 150-word summaries discussed during general public comment is important. On that day, I made public comment, which was summarized on page 3 of those minutes as follows. Quote, Ray Hartz reviewed an accounting report issued March 1, 2012 by the Friends of the Library, unquote. Right. I came here, waited for hours for a chance to make comment on item number 5, and I only commented on the fact that I reviewed an accounting report. I didn't say why I reviewed the report. I didn't say anything about what I found in that review. I didn't relate why I felt that review was relevant to the agenda item. What an idiot I am. I think most of the members of the public, if they reviewed the minutes and summaries done by the staff of not just this body, but any public body, they would find that nothing they said of meaning often gets summarized. It's nothing but censorship. The purpose of the Brown Act and the purpose of the Sunshine Ordinance is to ensure that public comment is open and clear. I think that extends because it is a constitutionally protected free speech issue, a constitutionally protected right to petition government for redress of grievances, and in particular a constitutionally protected political free speech right. That when someone makes public comment, they be allowed to have that accurately represented in the minutes of the meeting. It makes no difference if you can make public comment and then someone can take the official record and put in their version of what you said. And in many cases, what the version is they put down all the good things you said if you did and exclude the things you didn't. And the main purpose of the Brown Act is to protect dissenting opinion. The Sunshine Ordinance expands the rights under the Brown Act and says very clearly in unambiguous language, and as I showed you earlier, on 4 occasions I've gotten orders of determination from the task force, which were in most cases 7 or 8 to nothing decisions, saying that in the minutes means in the minutes. And that gives me an added protection that my politically protected free speech is not going to be changed and misrepresented in the official record. The city attorney has fought this, and the only thing he has issued is a memorandum which he honestly put out at the same time I got a copy of the requirements for a legal memorandum, and it meets none of those requirements. And yet they're using that to keep public comment and the 150-word summaries that people submit out of the official record. It's censorship, pure and simple. And anybody who wants to argue the other thing and, say, hey, just go read the law. It's the same thing I've said to the Library Commission and other commissions. Read the law. It is clear. Anybody who submits a 150-word or less summary of their public comment, that summary shall be included in the minutes. Now, how you get, attaching it just as good to be the same thing, And I have a hard time understanding why so many boards and commissions who have attorneys sitting on those boards and commissions don't seem to have much of a familiarity with constitutionally protected free speech and the right for me or any citizen of the city and county of San Francisco to have that politically protected free speech represented accurately in the record, except for the fact that public bodies in some cases, like in this one, they don't like to point out that the public mentioned something bad because they don't want somebody to be able to come back later and say, I told you about this, it's in the public record. They want to be able to go back and look at, Mr. Hartz said he read a report, which is meaningless.
Mr. Hartz, I'm going to break my usual practice, all of our usual practice of not responding. Did you submit a 150-word report related to the accounting report? on
No,
this
that one I did
occasion?
not, because Mr. St. Croix had made it very clear that they were not going to put him in. He's already told, Mr. St. Croix, I've got the letters here if you'd like me to show them.
I wrote them.
Yes. They basically say, we don't care, and in fact, the last letter response to the task force was, we don't care what your rule, city attorney says we don't have to put it in, and we're going to tell other boards and commissions they don't have to either.
We do what we believe satisfies the rule. If we had 150 words, it would be part of this set of minutes. I'm not going to argue, but I wanted to understand if you were saying that you had given us 150 words and they weren't here, or something else.
And
I
the
hear it was
Sunshine
something
Ordinance
else.
authorizes the
Thank you.
Sunshine Ordinance Task Force to determine and advise all city bodies on what the meaning of that ordinance is. And when they come out with 4 determinations, including one to the city attorney, saying that our reading of the law is a clear reading in the minutes, means in the minutes. Very frankly, I think you all know, as being reasonable people, that the only reason you want to keep these comments out of the minutes is so that dissenting comment will be not seen. And it will be placed out of context as an attachment where people either will not read it at all or will not understand how it fit into the actual conversation at which it was injected.
Is there a motion to adopt the minutes of March 26th, 2012 and April 13th, 2012?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. The next item on the agenda is the Executive Director's Report.
There's just one highlight I want to point out in item 1. It states that one candidate has submitted and been certified. I don't want to leave the impression that there's no interest in the public finance program this year. There are a lot of candidates who have come to trainings, who are working with staff, who are getting guidance about how to line up their contributions, what they need to do to qualify. So we expect the usual turnout in terms of percentages and numbers of candidates. They do seem to be getting a bit of a late start this year, but part of that may be that we're moving the application times and stuff to a little bit later. So I just didn't want to leave the impression that there's no interest in the program. And I'll take any questions you have after.
Any questions for Mr. St. Croix? Public comment on item 8.
Commissioners, Ray Hartz again, Director, San Francisco Open Government. Mr. St. Croix's reports are always target-rich documents. That is, it seems that every item deserves a full 3-minute public comment. I'll focus on number 2 today, the investigation and enforcement program, particularly the Sunshine Ordinance category. Mr. St. Croix is really off his game. By now, each of those 9 complaints should have already been dismissed without a hearing before the Ethics Commission. The one and only hearing this body has given to any Sunshine Ordinance Task Force referral was at the time of the civil grand jury report when it was issued, and the report said you had never conducted a hearing. I would have a really, really hard time justifying the fact that in all of the hundreds of hearings the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force has heard, and the few dozen that referred to this Ethics Commission, just one was even considered by the commissioners. In open government matters, you have effectively sided with the city and against the citizens in every single case. Now, you can use all sorts of specious ways of dismissing the referrals from the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force, but realistically, can you say that hundreds of citizens who file these complaints, it gets winnowed down by the task force to a few dozen and referred to you for enforcement, and yet you cannot even bother to consider them? You let the staff dismiss them, and you simply accept it blindly. And ultimately, what you're doing is siding with the city agency, whether it's a public records request or a public comment issue. You're siding with the city every single time by your inaction. This has been dragging on for years. And yes, you can say, well, we're trying to work on this, but justice delayed is justice denied. And you have dozens and dozens of cases that have been referred to this task force, which just got dismissed without anybody on the commission or on the commission even bothering to listen to the complainant. And effectively, ipso facto, you decided that the city was right and the citizen was wrong. I think it's the denial of due process, and I think that you cannot justify not hearing one single complaint other than that one. And the bottom line is, it looks bad for you, and I think it's particularly bad given the Mira Karimi situation, because the only case you've ever heard was against Jewel Gomez. You voted unanimously that she had violated the ordinance. You voted unanimously to recommend to the mayor that she be removed. The mayor ignored that. Now, how's it going to look when you make a recommendation to the mayor and he chooses to act upon it? The first time you heard a case about official misconduct, other than a politically motivated one, and you act on it.
The next item on the agenda is items for future meetings.
Anyone else?
Pardon me?
Anyone? I'm deferring to my other colleagues if they have items.
Well, I think this goes back to maybe the first or second commission meeting that I ever sat on, was this issue of the finding that the commission had made about the chairman of the library commission, and the letter and the finding that was sent to the mayor. And I don't remember which of the commissioners suggested that maybe an agenda item should be a follow-up to that finding to the mayor to demonstrate that we don't necessarily let it drop in a black hole. So I would propose that after we complete the special hearings, that we might want to make that an agenda item as to whether or not this commission should take some further action.
Commissioner Sedley?
I was going to follow up on that item as well, but I have a slightly different way of coming at it. My suggestion would be that we ask the mayor for his response, and that we ask the mayor to tell us how he has handled the letter that we sent. And I think that may be something that doesn't need to wait for a future meeting. So, my question would be: could the commissioner send a letter? Could the chair send a letter to the mayor asking that on our behalf, so that we could move more expeditiously, or would it be more prudent to have us look at such a letter at a future meeting?
I would just say you can't authorize the chair to send a letter in this agenda item, because it's only for future agendas.
Because it's not on this agenda.
Okay.
And it wasn't on our agenda for tonight. So then I would agree with Commissioner Rennie. As I told you, I think we should have some follow-up on that matter.
Any other views? Mr. St. Croix?
I'll discuss it with the city attorney after the meeting, but it may be that it's already within the authority of the chair to do something like that. So.
Okay. But I certainly have no objection to having it put on the agenda for a future meeting to request follow-up from the mayor. Any other items? Commissioner Studley?
Yes. I am interested in the report from the legislative analyst dated June 5th that we received, and I'd like to put discussion of that report on our agenda. I think at that point it might be useful companion for the executive director to tell us how he and his staff coordinate with the other cities in California with substantial ethics functions and related rules. He's told us on specific items a number of times about how those had the ethics officials and the ethics agencies for several California cities take advantage of each other's experience or expertise, share ideas, compare and contrast. And I think this seems like something that will be a useful document for us to review, and at the same time to understand what other comparative activities go on, because sometimes we have already been the beneficiaries of those insights and the experiences, and sometimes we've jointly developed solutions to technical or policy issues.
Commissioner Han.
Do we want to invite the legislative analyst to appear and report on, or do we only want to hear from Mr. St. Croix?
Or do we want to read it and see how we'd like to, what would be useful about it?
I think
could be a
it's
good idea.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Mr. St. Croix, do you have? So I understand that this budget analyst is here in San Francisco. Is that right?
It's our legislature.
He's a private contractor, contracted by the board.
Okay. I mean, I'd be happy to invite him. I'm not sure we would have the budget to pay for his time if that is what would be required.
Was it Harvey Rose that did this report? Oh, I see.
His staff.
Okay. Who signed this report?
That's Harvey.
Oh, okay, that's his signature?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, if we have to pay him to come and talk about the analysis, perhaps
We'll check.
I would reconsider. But if it's possible, I'd certainly like to hear from him directly.
I like that idea. Any other agenda items for future meetings?
This isn't exactly the right place. I meant to say it earlier, but in the various draft minutes related to the special meetings that we've been having, there is a systematic misspelling of sheriff that somebody's spell check just needs to go back through and correct. Sort of leapt out that we knew how to do it, except there's a certain list in which it reappears that way. Sorry, but better that than to think that we don't read all of what we are sent.
Okay. Public comment.
Commissioners, Ray Hart, Director, San Francisco Open Government, and I would thank both of the commissioners for making the motion to put this on a future agenda for the referral regarding Jewel Gomez. I think a lot of people in open government issues discussions really have felt that it's kind of not good for your position if you make a recommendation and it simply disappears and that's the end of it. If the mayor wrote a letter and said, well, I considered your recommendation and I've decided no, fine. If he writes a letter and takes some action, fine. But simply to have nothing is not acceptable. I think it's an insult to the commission, and I think it puts them in an awkward position of saying, well, we make recommendations and they sometimes just disappear and we don't even know what happens to them. Because occasionally, as has happened a number of times with Jewel Gomez's case, people will come back and say, what happened? And if your answer is always, that does not reflect well. I think you all know that. I don't come here to cause problems, but I do come here to point out areas where I feel things are not being handled appropriately. When I go to other public meetings at other boards and commissions, I tell them my two main concerns here are, one, to ensure that members of the public are free to make meaningful public comment, and two, that they're given access to public records, which in most cases you need access to in order to format that meaningful public comment. Just recently, a friend of mine went to an Arts Commission meeting, and after he made public comment recommending that they might get some sunshine ordinance training, one of the commissioners said, oh, am I allowed to comment to him? Which if he knew the ordinance, which he signed, he did, he would have known, yes, you're entitled to respond. And then he proceeded to say to the man, Mr. Whatever your name is, I don't know who the hell you think you are, but that's a bunch of bullshit. And I don't appreciate coming here and being lectured by somebody like you. Now, if that's the response from a board commissioner to public comment, especially legitimate public comment, it's disgraceful. People have a hard enough time public speaking. It's one of the things people fear most in their life. And it's hard enough for citizens of the city to come to a board or commission when they are concerned about a particular item and address those boards and commissions, and to be aware of the fact that members in the auditorium and members on SFGTV are also watching them. To then have somebody show a total animosity not only sends that message to that individual, but it sends a message to every other person in the chamber and every other person watching on government television. It says, we don't want your comments, we don't appreciate them, and if you say the wrong thing to us, we'll attack you. Now, a response is okay. The ordinance clearly says that members are free to express their opinions, to respond, and I want to again thank you for the responses that I've gotten tonight, although I may not agree with each one of them. But I respect the fact that they were given, and it is that give and take, I think, that really encourages people to participate in government. And I think one of the things that I see so frequently is the fact that many people don't go to boards and commissions because they really do not feel that the board and commissions care about what they say. And I've heard them do it. One time in a police commission meeting, they went to item number 2. They covered A and B in that item, and then went into closed session for 4 hours. Made everybody leave the chamber. There were at least 15 people that came to talk about item number 2. After the 4 hours, they came back, covered agenda item 2C, and then asked for public comment. And I was the only one that was left. When I got up and said, you know, that wasn't right, I was told by the vice president, you can't talk about that. You can only address the substance of the item. You can't address how we talked about it or how we handled it. And I said, yes, sir, and you're violating my constitutional rights. I respect the Constitution, and whenever I see people who are not allowed to comment freely without being discouraged, I will speak up.
The last item on the agenda is public comment on matters appearing or not appearing on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of the Ethics Commission.
Ray Hart's Director, San Francisco Open Government. When I joined the Navy, I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And one of the interesting things about that is later when I left the Armed Forces Entrance and Examining Station, I all of a sudden realized I had lived 20 years of my life, had all of these liberties that are granted to me by the Constitution, not only in this case of the United States, but of the state of California, and I had never had to do anything in return. And I also realized that at that point in time, I was never going to be able, in good conscience, to put that burden down. I think you know me by my appearances here, and I'm not too shy about telling you what I think. And you may not like it, but it's my right to do so, and it's also something that I feel I'm obligated to do in the form of petitioning government for redress of grievances. And when I see other members of the public attending public meetings and they're not given an opportunity to speak, or their comments are disparaged or whatever, I just find that totally unacceptable. Primarily because in many of those same meetings, every member of the commission or board has taken an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States and that of the state of California. And by denying people those rights, they are violating that oath in my mind. It is critical that people participate in government, because one of the things I've learned in life none of us is as smart as all of us. And one of the reasons the Bay Area is such a magnet and such a vibrant and dynamic area is because we have people here who come who are free to express themselves, whether it's the technology field or any other field. And I think that really shows well. And I think government benefits at all times by being open and not just accepting public comment, but soliciting public comment, making it clear to people, we're not just going to allow you to speak, we want you to speak. Thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. The meeting is adjourned.
Just one quick question. Now, the court reporter,